It's been a day just like any other, working into the late hours of the night. Detective Johnson gets up from his chair, ready to head home. Stretches his tired muscles and rubs his eyes, feeling the weight of exhaustion on his shoulders as he heads towards the door. As he reaches the door, he senses something is off. As he turns to look, he hears what sounds like trickling water. Detective Johnson cautiously approaches the sound. As he gets closer, he notices that the sound emanates from the bathroom. He walks in to investigate and sees a small puddle on the floor coming from a leaking pipe. A pungent smell hits the detective square in the face as he recognizes the smell. It's piss. Detective Johnson quickly realizes that someone had intentionally sabotaged the precinct's plumbing. As he inspects the bathroom further, he notices a crumpled piece of paper lying on the ground. As he unfolds it, he reads a threatening message. Something tells him that this must be from a certain notorious criminal that he had been hunting for years. It seems like the criminal was out for revenge and had targeted Detective Johnson specifically. Detective Johnson's heart pounds faster and faster as he reads the message, realizing the danger he could be in. He rushes back to his desk to call for backup, knowing that he cannot face this nefarious criminal alone. As he tries to dial, he realizes that the phone has been disconnected and the lines have been cut. Detective Johnson's mind starts racing with the realization that he is trapped in the precinct with a dangerous criminal on the loose and no way to call for help. He frantically races for the parking garage, hoping to escape before this crazed criminal catches up to him. As he approaches his car, he notices that all the tires are flat, and his windshield is smashed. Detective Johnson realizes that the criminal had planned this attack meticulously. He looks around frantically, trying to find a way out. He hears a faint sound coming from the door out to the alleyway. He musters up a bit of courage and walks out the door into the alley. As Detective Johnson steps into the alleyway, he sees a shadowy figure ahead. The figure suddenly darts away, leaving behind a pungent smell of urine that burns in his nostrils, causing his eyes to water and his stomach to churn. Johnson's instincts were right. It's the peeing man. This vicious bandit is back on the loose. Looking around cautiously, he knows that the peeing man is close, ready to attack at any moment. As Detective Johnson slowly moves forward, trying to keep his wits about him, he hears a faint rustling behind a nearby dumpster. Suddenly, the peeing man jumps out, his body twisted and contorted in an unnatural way, his eyes wild and crazed. The peeing man charges towards Detective Johnson with incredible speed, his hands outstretched and ready to grab onto the detective. Johnson fumbles for his gun, but the peeing man is too quick, dodging every shot fired and delivering a swift kick to Johnson's gut that knocks the wind out of him. The peeing man looks down at the detective's pants. He sees that he has indeed pissed himself from the sheer force of the kick. This may very well have been a dirty trick, but the peeing man doesn't care. He smells fresh piss, and now he has reason to abduct the detective. The peeing man reaches down to grab Johnson by the collar, his grip tight and unforgiving as he drags him away. As they disappear into the darkness, the only things left behind are the sounds of the detective's labored breathing, mixed with the faint scent of urine that hangs heavy in the air. Detective Johnson wakes up, his eyes adjusting to the dim lighting. Groggy and disoriented, he feels around the concrete floor, trying to get a sense of where he's at. His body still aching from the peeing man's kick, he slowly stands up. As he brushes himself off and ponders the situation, it hits him. The acrid odor of stale piss. Johnson wonders if this could be the infamous peeing man lair. As he takes a step back, he sees something glimmer in the faint light. He reaches down to grab it and feels familiar with the weight of the object. It's a detective's badge. It's been tarnished and worn. He rubs the dirt off in his coat so he can check the badge number. He holds the badge up, examining it closely. 0362, a number he is intimately familiar with, but never thought he'd see again. This is Richard's. Detective Dick was captured many months ago when they were last on the peeing man's trail. Johnson doesn't believe his eyes. Richard might still be alive. No one has ever truly known what became of the Peen Man's victims. Johnson has to get to the bottom of this. But then his heart stops as he notices he's trapped. Iron bars blocking the only window. How did he even get in here? The Peen Man must have built this entire cell around him, making sure he'd have no chance of ever getting out. Johnson falls to his knees. He feels the weight of it all. More than a decade has gone by. Dozens of partners gone missing. Hundreds of missing person cases left unsolved. Is this really where it ends? He's lost all hope for justice. For Richard. For his own sanity. There's no way out of this piss-stained hellhole. Desperately, he bangs his clenched fists on the wall, trying to push the despair and hopelessness away. Suddenly, the wall starts to crack open. This, literal, piss-poor construction is crumbling before his very eyes. Dust and debris rains down on him, the ground shaking with each impact. He tries to scramble out of the way, but it's too late. The floor gives way beneath him, plunging him into the dark abyss below. He tumbles and twists, feeling like he's falling forever. Suddenly, his body hits solid ground, and though he lands on something soft, his body still takes a beating from the fall. He is hurt, but alive. Detective Johnson stands up and brushes himself off once again. His eyes begin to water as the fetid stench of even staler urine forces its way up into his nostrils. He looks around, trying to make out where he is. Johnson now sees what gave him that soft landing. It's piles and piles of what appears to be dirty laundry. But Johnson knows that any item of clothing in the Peen Man's vicinity are not only dirty, but every fiber most likely also drenched in urine. The hardened detective starts to feel the anxiety gnawing on his sanity. He has to do something. Quick. Johnson taps his coat, feeling for something in his inner pocket. It's still there. The Peen Man didn't even notice. He pulls it out and unwraps it. Johnson bites down on the chocolatey goodness as he tries to console himself. Richard always warned him about the dangers of stress eating, but Johnson can't help himself. It's the only candy with the cookie crunch, and it helps him stay focused. Johnson takes a deep breath and reminds himself that he needs to stay calm. He needs to focus on the task at hand and put the Peen Man behind bars where he belongs. He starts to search the piles of piss-soaked laundry, looking for anything useful or signs of a way out. As he rummages through the piles of old clothes, Detective Johnson uncovers something near the wall, previously hidden by the piss-stained garments. It appears to be an old ventilation shaft. He quickly pries off the cover, revealing an opening, just wide enough for him to crawl through. He knows that it's a risky move. He might tumble even deeper into the unknown of this forsaken place. But he has no other choice. He takes an unwilling deep breath and starts to crawl through. The air is even more damp and musty in there, but somehow less pissy. It's hard to breathe, but he manages to keep moving forward. As he crawls further, he can hear faint sounds of movement nearby. Detective Johnson freezes, his heart racing with fear and uncertainty. He knows that he must be careful not to give away his position. The Peen Man could be close. He already had several encounters with him, and once the Peen Man latches onto the scent of your piss, it won't be long before you stand face to face. But before he finishes his thought, the ventilation shaft collapses and falls to the ground with a loud crash. The sounds of clattering metal echoes through the air as Johnson slowly tries to sit up straight. As he peers through the darkness, he is met with what appears to be a bedroom, but somehow it feels different than any room he's ever been in. The walls are covered in yellow tattered newspapers, and there are strange symbols etched into the wooden walls. Johnson stands up to further examine the etchings. He traces his fingers over the etchings, trying to decipher their meaning. They depict what looks like a man, woman, and child standing in some sort of puddle or body of water. As he studies the etchings further, they begin to tell a story. The man, woman, and child are depicted as a family struggling to survive in a world that seems to be falling apart. What appears to be a pair of stained jeans, the family huddled together around them as if it's the only thing that matters. Then some sort of dark entity is depicted as if it is disrupting the family. The family appears to fear this thing. But what could it be? As Johnson deciphers the etchings further, he comes to a startling realization. The dark entity depicted in the etchings. It's himself. Johnson is the one disrupting the family and causing them to fear him. His heart sinks as he realizes the truth. He's been consumed by his own personal vendetta against the Peen Man for so long, he never stopped to think of the ramifications of his actions. His hunt for the Peen Man. It's been his whole life. He became blinded and obsessed with the pursuit of revenge, and now he has brought chaos and destruction upon this poor family. This family relies on piss-soaked pants for sustenance, and he has been trying to put a stop to it for decades. He pisses himself deliberately as to convene his sorrow for this broken home. But wait, what is he thinking? The Peen Man has been abducting people. He is a criminal. Johnson cannot believe what got into him, what caused him to think this way. He feels a surge of anger and frustration. He cuts off the stream, unzips his pants, and with his last drops of urine, he pisses all over the etchings on the wall. But before he finishes, he feels a sharp pain in the back of his head, and everything goes dark. Detective Johnson is awakened by a piercing stench of urine. As he opens his eyes, he is blinded by an almost fluorescent blue hue. Every wall around him, constructed by what appears to be urinal cakes. This must be the Peen Man's lair. Johnson's been trying to track down its location for years. As he looks around, he is startled by the Peen Man standing before him, a crazed look in his eyes as he holds a syringe filled with a yellow liquid. The Peen Man lunges towards him, trying to stab him with the syringe. Johnson tries to struggle against his restraints, but they hold tight. As the Peen Man injects the liquid into Johnson's arm, he feels a burning sensation spread throughout his body. The stench of urine now penetrates even deeper into his nasal cavity, causing him to gag and retch. The Peen Man watches anxiously as Detective Johnson writhes in agony, the peppery piss odor permeating every fiber of his being. Johnson lies helpless on the floor, feeling like he's drowning in a sea of piss, unable to escape. As the burning sensation subsides, Detective Johnson slowly opens his eyes to see the Peen Man grinning maniacally. He knows he needs to act fast, but the overwhelmingly vile stench of urine is making it almost impossible to think clearly. With a burst of strength, he manages to break free from his restraints and lunges towards the Peen Man, tackling him to the ground. The Peen Man's body hits the ground hard, and the syringe flies out of his hand, shattering against the wall. Detective Johnson struggles to hold the crazed criminal down, his sharp stinging odor making it difficult to breathe. The Peen Man struggles beneath him, his wild eyes darting around the room as he looks for a chance to break loose from the detective's firm grip. Johnson knows that he cannot let his guard down for even a second, the Peen Man being so extremely dangerous and unpredictable. He tries to look for something that'll help him restrain the madman. He notices a pile of pants on the floor. Detective Johnson quickly grabs a pair and wraps them around the Peen Man's arms, keeping him restrained. But the pants are soaked in urine, dripping as he tightens the knot. This further enrages the Peen Man, who struggles against his restraints even more. The Peen Man's blood-curdling screams, combined with the eye-watering stench of piss, is beginning to wear on the seasoned detective, pushing Johnson to his limit. He has to silence him. Somehow. In an act of desperation, Detective Johnson breaks loose a urinal cake from the wall, stuffing it into the Peen Man's mouth. He holds it down until the Peen Man stops screaming, his wild eyes now fixed on the cake in his mouth. The Peen Man seems calmer, starts drooling as if he's enjoying it. With a newfound sense of clarity, he looks around the room, taking in the details of his surroundings. He sees several empty syringes and canisters lying on a nearby table, crumpled drawings and mindless scribblings plastered on the walls, evidence of the Peen Man's twisted experiments. He notices a bottle of drain cleaner sitting on a shelf. He grabs it, knowing it could come in handy. He looks back at the Peen Man, still sedated by the urinal cake. With cold determination, he tells him that his days of terrorizing the city are over. The Peen Man, still chomping down on the last bits of urinal cake, starts to snarl and spit.
You'll never piss in peace as long as I'm alive.
Johnson feels a shiver down his spine as he knows this gesturing all too well. His mind starts racing, flashing with the images of all the previous partners and victims, as this was the last thing they heard before being taken away by the Peen Man. Johnson knows that he has a duty to bring this dangerous criminal to justice, but as he contemplates his next step, he feels it. The urge to urinate. Johnson knows that even the most minuscule amount of fresh urine will instantly enrage the Peen Man, giving him the strength to break free from his restraints. Detective Johnson fights to hold it in, but the urge grows stronger with each passing second. Now with an even greater sense of urgency, he has to find a way out. Maybe he can dig his way out through the urinal cake walls. He has to try. He has no other choice. Cake by cake, he manages to make a sizable hole, almost large enough for him to squeeze through. Suddenly, the Peen Man's body begins to convulse violently behind him, causing Detective Johnson to jump back in alarm. As he watches, the Peen Man's eyes roll back into the back of his skull as he lets out a long, guttural scream.
Is that rage beast I smell?
The Peen Man yells out in a terrifying shriek. A single drop of sweat drops from Johnson's forehead as he glances down at his pants. He pissed himself. Again, paralyzed from the fear of what might occur, he didn't even feel it leave his bladder. Enraged by the scent of fresh piss, the Peen Man breaks free from his restraints and charges at Detective Johnson. Johnson's life flashes before his eyes. But then he remembers. At the time he didn't need it, but now he needs it, and he knows exactly where it is. He pulls the bottle of drain cleaner out from his pocket and throws it directly at the Peen Man. The bottle bursts open on impact, sending a shower of toxic chemicals onto the crazed criminal. The Peen Man lets out a beastly squeal as the acid eats away at his flesh. Detective Johnson sees his chance to escape. He narrowly squeezes through the opening he created in the urinal cake wall and starts running down what seems like a hallway, trying to make out what lies ahead. The sound of the Peen Man's screams echoes through the halls, and Johnson looks back to see if the Peen Man is chasing after him. Blinded by the glow of the urinal cake walls, Johnson stumbles and bangs his head against a pipe, knocking him unconscious. Detective Johnson wakes up with a pulsating headache. He finds himself strapped to a table, unable to move. The Peen Man stands over him, a sinister smile on his face.
Hello again, Detective.
He says in a menacing voice.
You won't escape me this time.
He says as he laughs to himself. The Peen Man pulls out a large jug with a hose attached to the end. He stuffs the hose down Johnson's throat and starts pouring in a yellow liquid. Johnson struggles as he gags, feeling himself getting weaker with each passing second. A pleasant warmth spreads around his groin, and the Peen Man laughs louder and louder as he feels himself slipping away.